Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Genesis Community Livecast. This is our Genesis Shapers recap episode for January 2021 Shapers meeting. And the theme of the meeting was Sell Away With Me, Building Badass WordPress e-commerce sites. For those that don't know me, my name is David Vogelpole. I've been a proud member of the Genesis community for over 8 years. I lead Genesis at WP Engine, and I love helping the Genesis community get better together with my friends from the Shapers. Joining me for this episode are two of my friends from the Shapers. I'd like to welcome back Carrie Dills of carriedills.com. Hey, Carrie.
Come sail away, come sail away. Is
I
that
like
okay?
it. Musical interlude. And also joining us there, chuckling at Carrie's wonderful music skills and voice skills there, John Brown of Nine Seeds. John, welcome to the Genesis Community Livecast.
Thanks, David. Good to be here.
Awesome. You know, John, we've talked about you extensively on prior community livecasts, talking about all your comments and your
Oh, good Lord.
observations. I feel like it's just like great that you're here today.
Well, it's very kind of you. I find Shapers super helpful on a regular basis to check in with people. So
We love having you
very
there,
cool.
and I always love your very astute observations. But now you're here today, so you can speak for yourself. They were all good comments, by the way, from the past. So just in case you wanted to know.
They're not all
No,
snarky and yeah.
no words had to be bleeped out.
Snarky comments are like sometimes the best, though. You know, like you just like cut to the bone right away. Get the real information right away. That's what I love about you, John.
Well, very kind, David. Thank you.
All right. Well, we'll go ahead and kick off. So for those that haven't seen one of these recaps before, basically what we do is we roll through the questions that we ask the Shapers during the meeting. The meeting takes place in Slack. It's on the second Tuesday of the month, and we do the recap video after. So the first question we ask in every meeting is really a call to order. Who can make it today? And it looks like we have Remkus de Vries. I was there, yay! Matthew Cardenas from the Genesis product team. We have Phil Johnston from the engineering team, Anita Carter, prior guest here, as well as on several other Genesis Community Livecast episodes. Ryan Kenstra from the engineering team. John, you were there. What's with the whale? I asked people to like do a wave hand emoji. You did a whale emoji.
Whale, hello
I
there.
prefer animals, but I had just gotten back from Maui, watching humpback whales. So whales were on my mind. I had the fortune of being able to travel there for the holidays to see family. So
All right. Well, mark
and the
you as
humpbacks have just arrived in Maui, which is if you ever go to Maui in the spring or late winter, go see the whales. They're really special there.
ooh, that's a good tip. Well, we'll mark you as present anyways, despite your whale. We have Nawai Baidola. Love Nawai. They're out of Spain. Mike Hemberger of My Themes. Bill Erickson of Bill Erickson. Bill Erickson has like a new launch. I saw his new company he launched. I wish I had that site up.
Yeah, targeting publishers. That looks really cool.
Yeah, I know that's been bread and butter for his business for a while. It seems like he's kind of formed that into more of a kind of a company-centric offering instead of the BillErickson.net, I think is his URL.
Yeah, he's always been great at productizing services that way. It's always been a mentor of mine in terms of productizing services for sure.
Oh, his workflows and from like a freelancer agency perspective, how they accept clients, all that is gold. We have to have him on one time to talk about that.
Mm-hmm.
And then Robin Cornett, and then Carrie, you were there as well. Looks like Ryan Murray, and we had some other folks. Nick Croft joined a little later after we asked that first question. All right, so those were the folks that were able to make it to that meeting. So now let's get into the content piece, like the areas we were looking for feedback on. And for those, just for a little context, we try to work in questions that are beneficial kind of for the community. We work in questions that are beneficial for non-technical users, and then questions that are beneficial for technical users. And so it's kind of a mix of those things. But our first question is, the global lockdown and shift towards digital has caused a boost in revenue for many WordPress agencies and freelancers, but also hard times for many others. It's time to dig deep, Shapers. What are your top three lockdown-friendly tips for quickly finding new agency freelance work? that you can share for those in need. So in other words, if you're a freelancer agency and you've had kind of a dry spell of clients because of the lockdown, we really wanted to ask the shapers for their advice. Matter of fact, Ryan Murray actually responds with a humpback whale emoji.
I was going to point that out, that I
You
wasn't the
hadn't,
only whale fan there.
yeah, but his is an actual humpback whale, John. Yours was not a humpback whale. I'm just pointing that out.
When you do those check-ins, you only have like 3 seconds to find the right emoji, so you get the whale you get.
Well, I,
Next time, I'll spend 5 minutes to find the humpback whale emoji.
please do, or we will call you out on the Shapers Recap video. John, you were one of the first to respond. Why don't you tell us a little bit about what you've been seeing here with 2020? I know that kind of the services side is also part of your business.
Yeah, well, the bulk of our revenue has always been services. We keep trying to pivot to product, but anyway, it was an interesting year services wise because we certainly saw an uptick in our client services work at the beginning of 2020, and then July, August, it slowed down a bit to the point where November, December, getting a little bit worried. But then it popped right back up. And January has been gangbusters for us, which is so reverse because often we get our client base is medium to large business and they have marketing spend they're trying to exhaust budgets on by the end of the year quite often. So we see this November and December spending as these companies that have budgeted for marketing want to spend that money before the new fiscal year for them. But this year, January, it's been gangbusters. So um, it's been an interesting roller coaster for sure. Like I put in there.
Were
I
you just
think,
kind of writing it out, or did you do anything different in the lockdown to try to acquire
uh,
clients?
well, we wrote it out, and then because we have the product side, October, November, two of my developers did nothing but theme development work. So hopefully we'll see something from Nine Seeds on that very soon. But uh, it was getting back up to speed with Genesis custom blocks and Genesis theming going forward, and doing a lot of experimenting with full site editing. That won't be coming from us super quick, but having a diverse offering means that you can kind of shift things around depending on what's out there. So that certainly helped us keep everybody, fully employed, fully paid through the whole thing. That was a challenge, but
That's a,
having some diversity was helpful there.
yeah,
I
that's a
think.
smart.
Am I allowed to segue you into Anita's comment there? Because I think
Please, yeah,
there's
go for it. Yeah,
um,
any of the responses, go for it.
yeah, Anita chimed in there that with her client base, she discounted some rates for them because her client base includes a lot of photographers and people like that who weren't necessarily getting work during the pandemic, which is an interesting thing. Is I think you talked about how some freelancers and some agencies were going gangbusters and some were really suffering, and I think you have to think about what their client base is. And so a lot of our client base was reinvesting in marketing and doing online sales and things like that. And so that grew, but we don't have many freelancers and solopreneurs out there who are, photographers, creatives. Um, we have a few professional practices, but it's a different client base in that regard. And I think that really changed how people in the web development side fared through the pandemic.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. In my experience talking to folks, it's like it had a lot to do, like how you're dealing with it has a lot to do with your customer base and how they're dealing with it. I know at WP and we have clients kind of across the whole span of the universe, and there are
Mhm.
obviously certain segments are suffering than others. That's a good point. Maybe one suggestion would be thinking about other segments that aren't suffering as bad, maybe expanding your the type of clients you target. I also liked how you talked about using some of that downtime to work on other revenue streams for your business. I think that's another good tip. My personal tips, and I've done, I ran an agency for 5 years for those that are unfamiliar with my background. But I had, I guess, four suggestions. This one was actually really successful for me. I would call bigger agencies and ask if they have any overflow work. Particularly if you're a freelancer, we talked about how there's agencies that have a lot of work right now and some that hardly have any. Try to find the ones that do, because they actually might need help right now. And we were actually able to score some really big clients that way. We got Esurance that way. We got Pioneer Electronics that way. And
Oh,
so that's a really, it can be a really easy and fast path to get new work for you in your freelance or small agency. We would also email old clients and suggest something new they could do to improve their site. I saw quite a few uh, folks in the meeting kind of suggest the same thing. You can join agency programs for like things like Webhose or plugins or whatever, because they'll often have directories that can help you build leads. Um, Cold email businesses in your area. I know that that's sometimes a little awkward, and you really want to be careful with how you do this and certainly not violate spam laws. But just reach out to businesses in your area, right? Folks often get these emails from people offering web development or design services, but they're from people, anywhere in the country or around the world for them. And so sometimes it's nice to say like, hey, I'm down the street. I can help you out if you need some help. Have you ever used that, John or Carrie, like the local approach?
I've yes. For a while, the majority of my client work was coming from uh, local customers, and that was good. It was a great way to build relationships within the community, and that's actually how I found a lot of the business to begin with. Uh, it was not a chamber of commerce group, but something similar for um, female entrepreneurs and women-owned businesses, and um, yeah, that works. It wasn't necessarily cold, but it was calculated.
What about you,
yeah,
John?
I've known a few people over the years who use like Chamber of Commerce or Junior Chamber of Commerce, and some of those. What's the? There's another professional organization. I forget the name of it. For almost all of their leads, and they're very hyper local. I've never wanted local clientele, mostly because, as you two know, I'm nomadic and we're all a remote team, and advertising local for a distributed small agency doesn't make sense because invariably they expect something different than what we offer.
You bounce
Um,
around a lot too, don't you, John?
I
You
do.
travel a
Uh,
lot. Like your local
well,
for you means lots of
when
different
it's
things.
when it's not pandemic, I travel a lot. Uh, there's whole different stories there, but I was going to say, no, I think reaching out local works well. Uh, we got a few requests from freelancers and stuff, desperately looking for work. I wish I could have helped them out, but we were tapped out keeping our own people busy. We've never done outbound kind of marketing, cold calling, or anything like that. But a friend of mine, Rich Stats, who I've met at Cabo Press years ago, does a ton of that and gets fantastic work out of it. And it's like nobody does it. Nobody does it well. He's domestic, I think in Colorado, Boulder or something. And but he does that reach out via paper mail in a fantastic way. And I think that's a huge differentiator. Um, you can find your own niche, right? And he has. Um, and it's not cold emailing people, because I think cold emails we all just completely ignore. I get a dozen of those a week from Ukraine and Latvia and India and all over. And um, I
Well, if
know
you
a
got
few
one
good
from down the
developers.
street, don't you think you'd be more likely to read the email and consider it?
I do. I think if it was down the street, I'd reach out more personally by phone or by mail, than an email. But um, it's that thing. Like we all have to delete 100 spam emails a day. It seems like.
Yeah, and I'm not
Uh,
advocating spam. The point, and my tip was like just reach
well,
out to, yeah, yeah.
I don't. We all have a differing threshold of what we call spam, right? And for me, spam is anything I didn't request in my inbox. um, but yeah, it's not. I mean, it's not. Uh, but anyway, no, those are great tips. I think those are great tips.
Yeah, I think with the I love the discussion around, and I had a lot of success with. I didn't have success with Chamber of Commerce, and that was just a whole other
Mm,
story. But I went to tons of meetups and got a lot of clients that way.
mm,
And it was a long game. I had to go to the meetups every month for months on end to start getting good lead flows. But once I established those relationships, it was great. But that's dried up. I talked to a gentleman in the UK who said he got his clients just going to the coffee shops and pubs around town, and he would just
mm,
like stumble into people and get to know them and then get a client that way, and that's all dried up. So I was really focusing on these kind of virtual type strategies, and the meetups don't really provide that avenue anymore. So I think like cold outreach is probably on a lot more people's list these days.
mm.
um, let's see who else had some good stuff here. Looks like Sally saying she was insanely busy all year. So she was one of those folks who had ended up getting more work because of the pandemic. Pitching old clients work, that was a big deal for us back in the day too. We would come up with a new idea. We just look at their website and be like, if you did this, you could potentially get more success, and email them. That was always helpful. What about care plans and maintenance packages? Looks like some people, Sally does it, others don't. What are your thoughts on that? We'll start with John this time.
Yeah, we've always done that, and it is a good stable revenue flow. The interesting thing is, at least as we structure it, we don't make a lot of profit on the maintenance portion of it. Um, it's it's a stable amount, a chunk of money, which is nice, but the amount of time we spend actually updating sites, managing sites, testing sites, it's not super high profit. What it does though is it maintains an ongoing relationship with those clients that then ask for services work um, on a regular basis, and so that is way more profitable for us. Um, I've seen all sorts of structures out there for maintenance, and some people, do retainer type agreements. We don't. Our maintenance is 1 to 2 hours a month, depending on the client, and so that's about what they get in terms of value. Um, but it's really that lead into more services work because they call us and they're like, "Let's do another 100 hours of this or that," and that's the real benefit there. So it keeps those clients engaged. I think I mentioned this maybe in that Shapers meeting that um, there are uh, consultants out there who just want to build it and walk away, and they don't want anything to do with the ongoing services. Uh, and it works for them. I know they're very successful doing that. Um, I think Bill Erickson is the person who always comes to mind like that. Although he does do some ongoing work, it's not none. But he really likes the building of the big new site. Um, and I think it just speaks to the diversity of agency service offerings out there, or freelancer offerings out there.
Yeah, that
Um,
makes
that
sense. I know a lot of people are like leaning in on the maintenance and care packages and reselling hosting. And some people like do well. I mean, if you were what is it, charging $100 a month and score 100 customers doing that, I mean, you're talking $10,000 a month. That's not bad stream of revenue, in addition to custom,
yeah.
obviously, in addition to the custom work you might also get. So I was just curious if people were leaning into that more with the pandemic and other revenue streams drying up. The other thing I like about it is it's less uh, volatile, right? If people are kind of paying on a monthly basis, it's less volatile than the number of people that might be coming to you with, I don't know, a two, three, five, $10,000 website deal, web design, project. And so for me, I felt like it was a really interesting strategy considering the volatility we've had. Because that would, and having run an agency with like 22 employees, I know how volatile it can be and stressful it can be to keep making those numbers, keep getting payroll on, all that other stuff. And so having that stability in revenue seemed like a strategy worth pursuing for whoever that might think that's a good fit for them. For the sake of time, let's move on to the next question. We asked the Shapers, in your agency freelance work, do you resell any technology as part of your offering to clients? In other words, like themes, plugins, hosting. And if so, do you require your customers to require their own licenses and services before starting a site, switch to their own license, so on and so forth? So the gist is basically, in your freelance and agency work, do you have the clients buy their tech and services directly, or do you sell it to them? So that was basically the gist. Um, Carrie, we'll go with you this time. What is your response? Client buys everything and owns everything, or do you sell it to them?
Done it both ways. I've never resold hosting. For that relationship, I I want that relationship between my client and the host, and I don't want
Why?
anyone in the middle. Um, I think John, I think you touched on this in one of your comments, but the if something I had so many people come to me over the years, and the story of the developer ran off or whatever, and it was they couldn't access uh, their website. They didn't know what to do. And I just never wanted to get caught in the middle of that. Like, and so I was always up front, like, uh, I don't have ownership of your thing. You have complete control. I'm here. for whatever you need. But if I'm hit by a bus or whatever, it, your site will keep on ticking. So that was why I never resold hosting. But on the licensing side, um, it's really frustrating to because I want to same as hosting. I would like my clients to have their own licenses, but there's no elegant way of passing along billing to the client. Um, for instance, I had a WooCommerce shop or project a couple of years ago, and I needed to buy various add-ons, and these are annual subscriptions. And so I wanted my client's credit card on the account. So that means I'm creating an account under one of my email addresses, getting their credit card. It's just not a good process. When Flywheel uh, came onto the scene, I don't know, back in 2013 or whenever it was, they introduced client billing, which is the slickest thing I've seen, in a way that lets you, as the technology provider, get in there, make decisions about what services they need, and but billing is sent to the client in a super easy interface. And I wish more companies would take that approach.
Yeah, it's hard to do that. License passes. I had a similar thing with reselling hosting in my agency days where I was like, I don't want to get in the middle of that if there's a fight. But I know a lot of folks have a lot of success with it. I mean, you kind of talked about that white label thing that Flywheel has. It's now called Grow Suite, by the way, but it's really designed around agencies and monthly recurring revenue, or MRR, that stability in revenue, which I think is critical, particularly for the agency's perspective.
Mm.
But you're balancing these kind of ownership questions with the clients. John, you said we generally don't sell technology to our clients, ellipses. Why don't you tell us a little bit more about why you don't sell technology to your clients?
I'm massively guilty of too many ellipses in my writing. So
Well, you
thank
had
you for pointing that one out.
5 dots, so it's not technically an ellipses.
I'm always stream of consciousness, uh, but to the point, we generally ask our clients to buy licenses directly. The We just don't want to get into the issue of renewals failing or any of that, as well as the bus factor that Carrie mentioned. If
Let's say the
9
lottery
seats,
factor, like you win the
yeah,
lottery.
the lottery factor. Like if I win the lottery and I retire, I buy an island in the tropics and never see the internet again. I don't want someone to lose their access to their bread and butter websites.
You have a
Uh,
very specific retirement plan here, John.
I do. It all comes together. Trust me. Uh, but no, there are a few things where we have developer bulk licenses like Gravity Forms or something like that that can be used on as many sites as we want, and there's no real support burden for us to add it. So for those maintenance customers, again, only the ones who are paying us on a monthly basis for maintenance, they also gain access to that licensing, um, of licenses that we buy anyway. And it's part of the value add there. But when it's a one-off license, like we're like, oh, we need the events calendar for this one site, um, then the client needs to buy that license directly. So it's a little bit of a mix. And when it comes to hosting, domains, all of that, no, we won't touch that. And the simple reason is what Carrie said. It's the risk of somebody going away and having the keys to that. Uh, Years ago, I mean, I'm talking 10, 15 years ago, probably closer to 15. There are a few hosts that did kind of shared hosting reseller stuff where they offered to bill. Uh, None of it was good. Flywheel was the first one that came out where it was good, and really was a good solution for folks that had those clients that needed to be on $10, $20 a month hosting, and you could resell it and bill it in a sensible, controlled way. Um, so anyway, it's again, it goes back to there's such diversity out there. I've learned not to poo-poo any of them as being a bad business model.
Yeah, I mean,
There's
reselling
just
hosting has been, I was going to say real
yeah,
quickly, reselling hosting has been, kind of bread and butter for agencies forever. And that kind of holding the keys part you mentioned is the
yeah,
reason, because
yeah.
it's harder for customers to leave you, is the kind of traditional logic there.
Yeah, and I think from our early days, and this goes back to John Hawkins when we started Nine Seeds, was we don't want to hold those keys. We don't want clients ever beholden to us. No long-term contracts, no lock-in, no, we'll build it for free and you'll pay us $1,000 a month forever. It's just not the business model we ever wanted to be on the other side of. So we never wanted to be on this side of it either. Um, and it is, I'm gonna get a bit judgmental, even though I just said I wouldn't. It just seems very, it's old school, but I think it's a bad part of the old school that we should get away from. The lock-in that reselling hosting tends to be.
I don't know,
You
like
know,
I feel like
I don't know.
if I went to do the agency over again, that I absolutely would have recurring fees for clients and some sort of like hosting plus maintenance thing, and then stack those up over time, because the challenging part of growing an agency is you get a project done and you're done, and then you got to find the next one to keep your business growing, and you're just chasing that over and over and over again. I felt like not having the recurring revenue in my agency just made it like 1,000 times harder. I mean, we had retainers and things like that. I'm not saying like we didn't have those things, but like, to have that kind of baked in recurring revenue automatically billed, low touch for each client, seems very attractive.
Oh, I'm 100% behind recurring revenue. That is, but I think that it should be like, it's so hard to speak about it politely, I guess. I think it should be based on the services provided, right? Which is the maintenance side of it. I don't own a data center. I don't have DevOps engineers. You shouldn't be paying me for the work those people do. But the flip side of it is I really do wish that um, hosting, WP Engine does a better than average job of it. Flywheel did a even better job than that with the whole having a resale structure that was client, like end user and client friendly. Um, Again, I feel best when all of my clients can fire me in a single click. Like it sounds silly, right?
No, I
But
know it's a
um,
position of confidence, right? You're
I,
confident in your work.
yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
I none of them do, or very rarely they do. But um, and when they do, good. If you don't have a good feeling working with us, then move on, because it's both sides of that business relationship need to be positive, or it's going to go further and further south. So,
Those are
um,
good insights. Carrie, I'm going to start with you in the next question for the sake of time. We'll move to the next question here in a second, but I just wanted to kind of recap what some others thought. Anita has clients. Anita Carter has clients by their own. Sally Getch, so she doesn't resell either. Kind of has clients buy it on their own. Let's see who here.
is there
So,
anybody in there who resold hosting directly? I don't remember
Uh,
seeing anybody.
we did a survey of agencies recently at WP Engine. I'm not seeing any here that say specifically that they resell hosting, although we didn't ask that question specifically. But 62% of the agencies and freelancers, and we polled about 5,000 of them, and they were all WordPress folks. 62% of them resold in some way.
Hmm.
Yeah. So I think it just
I mean, even
depends.
when we have a couple clients now on kind of custom hosting setups on DigitalOcean and AWS, and even them, we have they have their own billing agreement with the host there. We do all the maintenance, we manage it, but I still wouldn't call that reselling. But anyway, moving on. Sorry.
Yeah, no worries. But yeah, to your point, no, it doesn't look like anybody else had mentioned that, but it looks like probably at least from the, I'm going to air quote licenses for a second because of the GPL thing and how that works with what you buy. But for the most part, people are having clients kind of buy their own versions of those things. So good feedback there. And this is just for everyone listening. This is important to us because as people use the StudioPress themes, we had a big conversation around like Genesis Custom Blocks Pro and the portability of blocks. Getting feedback and how people interact with clients is super helpful for us as we think about how we position and create these products moving forward. Next up is what are your best tips for improving site speed for WooCommerce stores in general, or specifically related to Genesis products? So one of the areas that we're looking at on the roadmap for Genesis related things is how well we work with WooCommerce, what capabilities we give for WordPress e-commerce stores. And so we really just wanted to kind of get a feel from the shapers, at least from the performance perspective, to kind of kick off where they thought the kind of best points of optimization were. Carrie, let's go with you first this time. I don't know. I'm not seeing that you responded here. Do you have favorite e-commerce
Uh,
optimization?
well, I agree with what Sally Getch mentioned, that she's not building WooCommerce sites that have just a zillion customers. So it's not like a ColourPop or somebody that's going to have a huge Black Friday sale. And um, so no performance, I have no performance tips at that level. But the one that Mike Hemberger pointed out that I 100% agree with is removing unnecessary scripts. Um, so WooCommerce is script heavy, and being able to take off scripts on pages where you don't necessarily need them is a quick way
Yeah,
to.
he mentioned like removing cart fragments. I know that's a favorite go-to for a lot of folks. And for those unfamiliar with what that is, basically it's a technique where you disable the auto updating cart on static pages, which will essentially make the page cacheable and work in your CDN and stuff like that. And so that's a go-to for people that are trying to optimize stores. The second one was, oh, the styles and scripts. Is that what you were referencing, Carrie?
Mm-hmm.
Gotcha. And he has a whole list here of scripts he removes. He removes the generator tag, all kinds of stuff.
Yeah, let's see. For anybody that is listening and wanted to see the scripts that he posted in the Genesis Slack, it's the e-commerce channel, and he actually posts the code snippets he uses
Mm.
for his
What date
project.
was that? Do you see that handy? It's probably
Oh,
early January,
maybe.
maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, he's got the full list in there. What about you, John? What's your favorite?
Uh, I agree with everything that Mike shared there. We remove lots of scripts. I think that one of the things to keep in mind is it's a lot of the same stuff we do for performance just in WooCommerce or WordPress in general. Um, uh, yeah, I mean, the other thing to keep in mind is that just like WordPress, we like to say like WooCommerce lets you shoot yourself in the foot. You can do things that are just there's no way to make performant. Like in WooCommerce, it's often variations. People do bizarre things with variations, and it just certain pieces of WooCommerce don't scale well if you use them wrong. There are ways of doing it right, but we see people like trying to do 50 variations on every product and then have 5,000 products, and it just it compounds when you make those database queries to get a bit technical that it just instantly becomes a massive performance problem. But it's as we say in WordPress, doing it wrong. Like sometimes you have to know how to do things right, and it'll let you do things wrong, and you'll suffer because of it. So part of that's just having experience with WooCommerce and knowing what to do and not do, and it's hard to articulate all of that. Apologies. I wish I had them written down as better tips, but
No, it's okay. And it's kind of funny, like Anita and Sally both pointed out that most of their
mm,
clients are kind of smaller stores when they build
mm,
ecom, and they actually don't worry about, they do their normal performance optimization, kind of like
right.
you pointed out, John. But they were kind of observing that without a lot of traffic and without a lot of maybe products or orders in the database, that it that it's just not a problem for them. Kind of just their normal build process ends up building performant sites. What about exporting those old order tables, John? Is that, or Carrie, is that something y'all done before?
I have not. John, how about you?
We've experimented with both the custom order tables and custom product tables, and didn't find it that different. We'd really hoped it would be a huge performance benefit. And that may just be that we were trying it on sites where it didn't help, and on a bigger site it might have. But then it's just the risk of uh, is it fully supported by WooCommerce's API? Will it be long-term supported? I still want to see those things in core, those performance enhancements fully in core and fully supported by the whole massive extension ecosystem or plugin ecosystem for WooCommerce. So.
Yeah, one of my, it's interesting when you talk about like those big order tables and sites that have a lot of orders over time, just in general. Like, and I'm sure y'all have experienced this at some point, but what happens a lot of times is those admin users, the store owners, go in the back end to run some financial report. And what happens to the site when they're running the report in WP admin is the entire site gets slower, or even crashes in the worst case scenarios. And
Yeah,
so
we have
that's
a e-commerce WooCommerce client that does live auctions, and when they do these live auctions of sporting cards, like player cards and that kind of thing, uh, they have massive traffic. They do massive revenue. That is like 1/10 of what happens when he goes into the back end and updates everything, because he updates like hundreds of products at a time with dozens of card variations and stuff. But you actually look at the server load, and to use a visual, it's like, okay, server loads at 1%, comes along, they do a live auction, it goes up to like 10% for an hour, drops back down when the auction's over. Then at midnight he comes in and does all of his updating in the admin, and the server load peaks to 90%. um,
ouch.
Wow.
it's just and it's just one admin in there doing updates, but it's all these inserts into the database tables that are just way more intensive than all the reads that the customers are doing when they're buying. Um, but yeah, it's just the admin, to your point, can be a huge performance hit. And we've seen
Yeah,
that on a bunch of different sites, not just that one.
that's why I like to use things, at least from the reporting perspective, like
Mm,
metric, to quote, I forget the gentleman, his name, who owns this, Bryce, I think is his name.
Bryce,
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah. Just because when you're running your reports, you're doing it outside of WP admin. So basically, the way metric works is it transfers your order data basically into metric. And then when you're running the reports, you're not taxing your WordPress instance. Glue is the other one that does this well, right? Have
yeah.
you tried Glue?
We tried using Glue years ago, a couple years ago, I guess. Um, it was really complicated. It was kind of like the Google Analytics solution for WooCommerce, and like those of us who've spent time in Google Analytics know that 90% of it just seems too complicated to be useful. Um, that's kind of how I came away from Glue personally. Metric is a simpler, easier, way more accessible to your average store owner, I think.
Bryce's velocity on new features and metric is insane. I don't know how that guy gets any sleep. Uh, he delivers so much value so quickly. I think Glue's
No, he
good
really
too.
does.
Yeah,
Yeah.
he's awesome. All right, we'll move on from website performance and speed and talk about ecom performance with revenue. So the reason this is important to us here at Studio Press and WP Engine is because our themes and the Genesis blocks. Really, their job ultimately at the end of the day is to help you sell something. So we really wanted to kind of understand how folks thought about revenue performance as well. So this question says, what are your best tips for increasing the conversion rates for the WordPress e-commerce sites you optimize? What can the Genesis community do to increase sales on their e-commerce sites? John, I'm gonna have to go with you first this time because you were the first comment. You say
Uh,
show less.
yeah, it was a very verbose answer. It was kind of metaphoric, wasn't it?
It's apropos for sure.
Uh,
Why show less?
just because we've found that backing off some of the features helps conversions, especially when you're dealing with simple stores that only have 20, 30 products on them. Showing all of the upsells and the related products and the chat pop-ups and the like, it just, at some point you have too much noise, it hurts your conversions, at least from what we've seen. um, so when I say show less, it's just be clean and simple, and realize that um, don't show extra information unless your client's asking for it, or your customer, I should say, is asking for it.
Patrick
um,
Garman,
yeah,
John, he had the same exact kind of response when I interviewed him on a podcast not long ago, and his was more around like speed optimization. He's like, just start cutting stuff out and see if your revenue's affected
yeah,
as a path to get a faster site. But he said it often will result actually in higher sales.
yeah. I mean, we've seen it multiple times, and it's a matter of yeah, just don't interfere with your customer buying the thing they're trying to get. it's kind of related. Like one of the store owner fallacies is that your homepage really matters. Sometimes it does, but most of the time, like the client's going directly to the product page. Worry about optimizing the product page and the checkout process, um, and just less friction. Gosh, we do that all the time to reduce friction to sale.
Blogs are a lot like that. I like to tell our content team the number one entry point to the blog is the post, not the blog
Yeah.
home.
Oh yeah. Like in the amount of time we spend on home pages, just it's still too much. We have a bunch of publisher clients, and they're constantly like, "Oh, we need to redo our homepage and do our layout." I'm like, no one goes to the New York Times. Like people don't even go to the New York Times homepage. Like like they follow a Twitter link to the post. Um,
That's
it's
why it's
not
so
reading the
important, I think,
newspaper.
before you can do a web design project or optimization project, to look at your analytics data first to see where folks are coming in and buying from.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
What about you, Carrie? How do we make more money on ecom?
Um, excuse me. I like the idea of that you added about live chatting. I'd never thought about that.
Because everyone else said they didn't like live chat. I'm
Well,
like the
I
only one who supports me here.
well, it's really annoying when you go to do live chat. I did this just yesterday on an e-commerce site. Um, Went to shop. I had a question about the product. They've got a live or a chat button. I click it, and they want my name and my email.
This was
Like
my
it's just
point.
a form just to get through the live chat. And I'm not giving you that information. Like, how about just be helpful and not like put a barrier? So I, bounced and went to a competitor site. But anyways, a live chat to your point where there's someone actually on the other end and not a bot uh, would be, I think, super valuable for certain kinds of sites. Um,
Yeah, I think Carrie, if you recall, my comment was as long as it's not faux live chat. Like
yes.
you want to know how to tick off a customer, uh, get their email, get their information, and then say, chat response time 12 hours. We'll email you.
Yeah.
No, either be live chat or don't, but don't pretend you're live chat because you're just gonna upset your customers. And it's what Carrie's saying. Don't ask for information up front. I get it, but yeah, I mean we use Jilt on a bunch of sites, and cart abandonment is a big conversion for us. I of all of the things out there, I think that cart abandonment emails are a um, big opportunity for e-commerce. I've seen the numbers, like, or it converts. And the thing is that whether it's a pop-up or whatever, you've got to get their email somewhere, right? To get that into the cart abandonment email. Um, and I don't think we talked about this in Shapers, but I'd say that's maybe number one. And I think, did WooCommerce just add some cart abandonment stuff of their own? Did I see either for WooCommerce.com or somewhere something new
I didn't see
in
that,
that
but
regard?
I don't
Sure.
follow that part that closely.
Anyway, um,
I have a confession to make.
Yeah, what is it?
I sometimes on big ticket items will abandon the cart just to see if I'll get an
That's
email
okay. That's
discount
okay.
to bring me back.
People like, I like that you like it. I feel like that when you figure that out, though, I feel like you're more likely to buy. But you were going to buy anyway, is your point.
Yeah, gonna buy anyway.
yeah.
So
Okay.
if I'm not in a hurry, might as well give it 48 hours and see if
There
they.
are a couple sites I know they will send me a 20% cart abandonment coupon. I've done the same thing. I know what you mean.
One of my favorite promotions we did at WP Engine was a coupon code, but the only way you could get it was entering the Kenobi. Wait, you're not saying that right.
Mm,
Konami code, the cheat
Konami
code,
code.
Konami
Yeah,
code,
yeah.
the Konami cheat code on your keyboard on the website, and it would reveal a pop up with a special discount. That was a fun promotion. But abandoned cart, big. It was mentioned here through the conversation, John. Obviously, that was a big deal.
Mm.
Live chat, obviously, when done respectfully in the right way. Let's see who else here has some good tips.
You mentioned
Well,
price, like A/B price testing, which is
yes, A/B testing in general, but certainly around
Mm.
pricing as well. Yeah.
yeah, which is interesting. The only um going back to low traffic sites, or maybe not low traffic, but like Sally and Anita were talking about earlier on e-commerce sites they were building, you have to get like a certain threshold of traffic before I feel like that is meaningful data.
That's, I think, one of the issues just with any site. I mean, even WP Engine, the size of our company and traffic, like when you start getting down into like sub pages, getting enough traffic to get an answer quickly can be challenging. And if you're a small site, that can be almost impossible. If you have 30, 40 products or even more, and you're a small site without a lot of traffic, that means each individual product's not getting a lot of traffic. The way I've dealt with that in the past is to just either test the product page lock, stock, and barrel. In other words, I'm just going to test one template across all pages and then kind of collect the results that way so you can get to an answer more quickly. Um, the other way, depending on your advertising budget, is you could just like concentrate all your ad spend to send to one product and kind of test them one at a time if you have your ad spend kind of spread out amongst products. But yeah, getting enough traffic in general is harder to testing. But on any particular product, especially if you don't have a lot of traffic to begin with, it might be impossible actually to get that kind of answer.
Do you
Uh,
think there's a general number for the number of page views you need to have useful data on a A/B test like that?
yeah, there's all kinds of folks that, publish information around like what's that sample size that you need.
Yeah.
Um, I'm not confident enough to give you like a number, but usually it's in the tens of thousands. But I actually am less concerned about the sample size as I am between the delta. If you look at
Mm.
A/B tests over time, and if you've run them before, you've seen this, is like the first few days there's like what seems to be a clear winner. And then 2 days later, the other one's the clear winner. And then over time, they kind of come together. And the saying I like to use is nobody ever got rich making buttons orange. You're not going to do these little micro tests. You'll see these in these like
Mm.
A/B testing and conversion rate optimization talks where people are like, "Oh, just make your buttons orange," or use pictures of people where they're looking at the call to action. Like these are all great tips, but like the reality is, you're not going to get to a major change through those kind of techniques. And then you're not going to be able to detect a change unless you have a ton of traffic, which most people don't have. Now, the other way, though, that you can detect a change is if you make a drastic change to your website. So let's say, by sake of example, that we change your e-commerce site homepage to only have one period on it. Well, it's obviously going to fail and is clearly detectable. So what the advice I give to folks when they A/B test is don't test small things. Don't test these little tweaks. Don't test one tip you heard in a session somewhere. Test the crap out of it. Just like change everything about the page. Change the value proposition. Words are the most powerful weapon in A/B testing. Your layout, your design, unless you're coming from a really bad place, typically isn't going to get you there. How you position your products, but the main thing, and we do this a lot at WP Engine, is don't test little things. Test huge things that are
Hmm.
very easily detectable, and that will help to abate the reliance you have on having a huge sample size.
Hmm.
Does that make sense?
Yeah,
Hmm.
great tip.
So yeah, like I call it searching for mountains and valleys. You're not searching for potholes and road bumps, right? You're looking for big giant things, so like go hard on it. Because it's also a speed game. Like a slow site takes a long time to do an A/B test.
Mm.
And so the bigger your tests are, the faster you'll get those answers, and you need to sequence through tests. 8 out of 10 A/B tests fail to beat the A. So you got to test often and quick, which means test big. All
Mm.
right, next question. Is WooCommerce how you build most of your e-commerce sites? If not, what do you use and why? It seemed like Shopify got a lot of votes when not using WooCommerce. But Carrie, what about you? Sometimes Woo, sometimes Shopify. What's your go-to?
I haven't really gotten into Shopify. I like EDD for most things.
Ellie
Just
mentioned
just
EDD to you there.
simpler than the whole ball of wax that is WooCommerce. John, how about you?
Wax is such a nice term for it. No, I like WooCommerce. It's interesting. I said this in Shapers, and I thought a little bit more about it. The vast majority that we do these days is WooCommerce. Years and years ago, we did a lot more EDD. But then we've always had a heavy business in membership sites. And I think it goes to the question, like, I think when we think about e-commerce, we often first think about selling product, but then after that realize that e-commerce is really also membership sites and LMS sites and all of these things if you're charging money, digital product only versus physical product. Um, and so, no, we still do some Restrict Content Pro. We use MemberPress. We use EDD. Uh, uh, that's the bulk of it. The things that we don't touch anymore are WP Commerce, Equid. Um, what was the other one for a while? Shop. Um, so there are product-based e-commerce plugins out there that I'd say are uh, not in use by us at all, um, to avoid using
Yeah,
the
WP Engine customers is dominated by WooCommerce and EDD when it comes to
sure.
e-com sites, like far and away. I'm sure that's true for all of WordPress. For the sake of time, we'll go ahead and move on to the next question real quickly. But it says, are you using the block editor with WooCommerce stores? If so, what content use cases for the block editor are most helpful? What problems do users have with e-commerce that would be interesting to solve with the block editor? Reading through the responses, I feel like most people were saying they weren't using the block editor very much in a e-commerce context, with maybe some exceptions. How did y'all interpret the responses there?
Well, I think that if you look at WooCommerce blocks, they're kind of designed where you can throw them into posts or pages. And it's just not, I don't think that addresses what people want, which is the ability to really easily customize the single template for products. I think that that's more of a, like that could be a blocks based template or a full site editing kind of template. And I'm sure as soon as full site editing comes to fruition, there'll be the ability to build a template just for your product page. And then all of those blocks will be more useful because the little tab thing you can put wherever you want, and you can move your pricing stuff around and move your gallery around. But it's like, it's one of the problems that everybody has with WooCommerce out of the box is that that product page is so rigid and blocks doesn't solve that. So I think that's why, at least us, we we don't feel we use the blocks much because what we really want is a GUI interface to change the product page.
Product pages, yeah, that makes
Um,
sense. I know as we think about blocks for the future, e-com is definitely on our list, and so it's helpful to hear, kind of what those pain points are. All right, last question for the shapers, and Carrie, we'll start with you on this one. What third-party plugins would you want to integrate your custom blocks with?
Um, on the e-commerce side, easy digital downloads for sure. Um, right now, their custom or their blocks are basically, and I think it's the same as WooCommerce, just replications of block versions of widgets. Um,
It's everybody's first starting point with blocks, right? Turn those widgets into blocks.
exactly. Um,
Looks like Sally says the event calendar.
calendar.
Let's see, what else do we have here?
I mean, I think some of it goes back to what I was just saying. It's the context you use the blocks in, right? Like, okay, so we have product blocks and we have event blocks and we have all these things, but how often do you need to stick those in a post? Um,
Yeah, it
it's
really
really
needs
more
to
about
be
site
modular,
design.
right? It's more modular type use cases versus like a static layout, essentially.
Right.
Yeah.
I think we'll get there.
All right. Well, if you have, so the reason we asked this question, by the way, is Rob Stinson, who is on the product marketing team for Genesis Custom Blocks, is making a bunch of demo blocks using Genesis Custom Blocks, and he'll give you the code and a write-up on how he did it. And he's looking for custom blocks to create that integrate with technology. So if you go to Genesis Custom Blocks in the Genesis Slack instance, you can make suggestions there at Rob Stinson and let him know if you have some examples you'd like him to create as he plans that content for the future. That's it for the agenda for the Shapers. I want to thank John for joining us today. John, thank you.
Thank you.
So glad you were able to make it. Carrie, thank you as well.
You betcha.
If you'd like to learn more about what John is up to, you can visit nineseeds.com. If you'd like to learn more about what Carrie is up to, you can visit carriedills.com. Thanks everyone for listening. And stay tuned for future episodes of the Genesis Community Livecast. Again, this has been your host, David Vogelpol. I've been a proud member of the Genesis community for over 8 years. I lead Genesis at WP Engine, and I love helping the Genesis community get better together with my friends from the Shapers.